Says live on YouTube.
Hi, everybody. So welcome. It's great to have you all with us. And thanks for joining us today. We're really happy to have you all with us. I'm Troy Peters, the YOSA Music Director, and I am joined today by Ken Freudigman, the conductor of the YOSA Symphony and YOSA Concertino Strings, and the principal cellist of the San Antonio Symphony, and the artistic director of Camerata San Antonio, and illustrious musical leader in San Antonio's life and culture. How are you holding up, Mr. Freudigman?
I'm holding up well. I'm finding lots of things to keep myself busy. I'm calling this my quiet time. I'm learning to enjoy things that are quiet. I'm doing a lot of pottery. And for those of you who follow me on Facebook, you know I'm running a lot at a social distance. So I'm doing a lot of reading. So I'm doing a lot of things, a lot of personal things that I couldn't do when we're, running at the normal time.
Right. Yeah, you and I were just talking before we started this live stream about how, in spite of how challenging and uncertain this time is, there is an opportunity here for musicians to explore other aspects of our musicianship or of our lives with your investment in pottery, your investment in your health and your running. The chance to, I've had colleagues talking about, playing through or listening to or studying repertoire that they haven't had time to look at. And I know for me, I'm looking to be a composer for more time than I have in years. And that's been really exciting because I've missed that. So I think it's a good thing to look at what are the elements of solace or the elements of kind of new experiences we can have in this window of strange, unusual time.
And I find for myself, before this all started, I found myself, I was running at 1,000 miles a minute, like so many professional musicians are, between my teaching and all my performing and conducting. There were things that I would love to do, but know that I only have so many hours in a day, so many hours in a week, and I've got my long-term projects in that year. So there are things that I could never get around to doing because I'm sitting there going, okay, I've got these 9 symphonies I got to do, and then blah, 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 blah. But now, since I have this time, just like you were saying from your colleagues, I'm tackling some pieces that I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, I have time to actually learn this stuff. And things that I knew I would never do under normal circumstances, I'm able to really explore some of these things. There's a Caprice by Klengel, based on a theme by Schumann that is stupid hard, but I'm enjoying the challenge.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I mean, that's a positive thing. And actually, that relates to one of the questions that we've had come in. Daniel Wong, who's a cellist himself, asked, for you, Mr. Freudigman, how much time do you practice each day or each week? And how do you keep motivating yourself to practice? And I think that could be, right now during this unusual time, but also could just be generally over the last couple of years of balancing conducting at YOSA and working at the symphony and working with Camerata and teaching. How much are you able to practice and how do you motivate yourself to practice?
Well, as a professional musician, it's part of my job. So I can more relate this to when I was a student. I practiced a lot because I knew there were things that I wanted to achieve. Right now, I'm still trying to practice 4 hours a day, because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end of what we're going through right now. And I want to make sure when I come out on the other end, I've not forgot how to play on the string, and this chart right there, what talks about bow speed right there, and who's that? Bow speed is your friend. I remember that I know how to do these things still, and it's maintaining my technique, and the motivation for me is my love of music. And actually, what I found is that I've always loved music, but it's never so, it burns even harder now than it did, 2 months ago. And it was burning hard then, but I mean, I gotta tell you, kids, I miss you terribly. I know Mr. Peter does, and all the conductors, and we will be back together again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Don't know when, but we will.
Well, and I've talked to friends of mine who are professional colleagues in orchestras, and Mr. Freudigman, the reality of being a professional orchestral player is not every day at work is fun, just like any other job in the world. And occasionally you'll meet professional orchestral musicians who will roll their eyes and say, "Oh, if I have to play another Dvorak New World, I'm going to kill myself." Yeah. But I had a friend who's a titled player in a top 20 orchestra just the other day send me a message where he said, "I don't care if it's Dvorak New World or Bolero or any piece that I hate, I can't wait to be back in an orchestra, and I will play it as long as they want me to play it, because I just can't wait to be back doing this thing that I love." So.
Yeah. It is. It's a very powerful thing that we do, and what I'm finding also is that I've had requests for us to put up more of our camerata concerts, because people who are audience members are saying we're starving for hearing you guys, and they want to hear it live, but they know they can't. But this music is so important, and how it touches people.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel had another question actually related to repertoire and how you select music. When you think about music for YOSA symphony concerts or YOSA concertina strings concerts, how do you select repertoire, and how far in advance are you making those decisions?
Often I will have, in terms of how long, I will have a season arc already planned out. I mean, right now, I'm already thinking about what we're going to be doing in the fall, and cross fingers. So I know what the trajectory will be in terms of repertoire, in terms of difficulty, of variety. And so by the time we start working, I know on day one if my plan is actually going to work. And a lot of it is, for me as a string-based person, I'm building repertoire that's built on things that are coming up from the younger orchestras. So when I get the kids who are in concertino, I'm building foundational stuff of bow strokes, because you know me, all the kids are going, "Oh yeah," I'm talking about all the bow strokes. So when we do those things there, and then I build it again to go for symphony. So by the time Mr. Peters gets these kids, it's so much easier for him to go, the entire repertoire is now available to him. And I think we talked about this 10 years ago, or is it 11 now, when you started? You couldn't do the things then what you're doing now, right, just because of the health of this organization, and so there's and the faculty that I mean, you guys are so blessed. Do you guys know how lucky you are to have these 9 orchestras and all of this faculty? It's quite something. But I have that arc.
Right. Well, and I'm really grateful for that, because one of the things that students should know is that Mr. Freudigman a couple of times a year says to me, "Okay, what do you need? What's coming up? What do they need to be ready for?" So that as I'm thinking about what we're doing a year from now or 2 years from now, that the foundation for that is set. So, for example, this is 2020, and part of 2020 is the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth. And Mr. Freudigman and I started talking about that a couple of years ago. How can we start to make sure that we'll have musicians in the YOSA Philharmonic who can play the Leonore Overture No. 3, who can play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony? Unfortunately, we weren't able to perform Leonore Overture No. 3 this spring because of this circumstance. I'm still really hoping we're going to be able to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony this fall. But over the last couple of years in symphony and in concertino strings, there's been attention to, okay, what are the things we need to be able to do with our bow to get ready for that? When I'm thinking about programming, I'm thinking about basically, I mean, there's 1,000 factors But the two primary factors I think about with YOSA are, first of all, what's gonna blow your minds? What's gonna make you just be like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I got to play the Firebird Suite. Wow. Like, and so how do I find those pieces that are amazing and fun, but we're also gonna sound great on? You know, they're hard enough that we're stretching and growing, but they're not so hard that we can't quite get there. And that's an interesting challenge. You know, I will admit I don't always calculate right. Sometimes it turns out I wish that I had given you something that's a bigger challenge. And every once in a while, I think, well, you know, that was a little hard for us. And I think that's true for every orchestra, but it's certainly true sometimes with youth orchestras. And then I'm also focused on looking at the pool of skills we have and the pool of skills I see coming up. So, you know, I'm watching what's going on in YOSA Symphony. I'm watching what's going on in all 9 of YOSA's orchestras to say, oh, okay, so this section's getting stronger, or this section we graduated a lot of people in, so maybe I want to be careful there. And it's a fun game, but it's hard. And then of course this year it's become more complicated. One of the other questions that's come in, Mr. Freudigman, is that Sydney Silva asked about what advice you have for musicians who are getting ready to audition for orchestras in college. And I would also say, if you're thinking about just getting ready for YOSA auditions, but how do you prepare most effectively to do your best work in an audition?
Well, what you need to do is you need to pick repertoire that is appropriate for where you are, because sometimes young students, especially ones who don't have teachers, have a teacher. I know all of us do, hopefully. But make sure that the repertoire that you're playing is very well prepared and shows exactly where you are. The thing about college auditions or orchestra auditions, we want to see where you are and what your potential is and what we can work with, and not trying to play the hardest thing that's in the repertoire poorly. You know, and I remember hearing kids. I remember thinking this too when I was auditioning for colleges. Well, why is that kid playing that piece? That piece is easy. And then I find out they got into that school and got a full ride because they were showing exactly where they were. You know, and when I going back to programming, when I program, I find out where you guys are, and then I go, doop. Now, if I decided that in symphony I wanted to do Firebird, first of all, Mr. Peters would go, we just played that, and he'd be like, that might be a bit of a stretch. Because there's some stuff in Firebird that are very difficult for professionals. There's one measure in there that I played perfectly on a Thursday 29 years ago at 4:07. Haven't done it since. So.
Right. Well, I want to echo something that Mr. Freudigman just said for everybody out there, that it's really important to show yourself doing well. Now, that doesn't mean you should play something that's way easier than kind of the level that you're working at. Because if you, for example, if you're an advanced high school player and you play something that doesn't show any shifting to higher positions, then for us, even if you play beautifully in first position, we're going to be wondering, wait a minute, can you play in third position? So we do need to see some of your technical skill. But there's no question that playing something at, you know, level 5 more beautifully than you would something at level 9 could be a good strategy. Sometimes just going in and doing a great performance of a piece that you learned a little while ago might be better than struggling through the thing that you're just getting to. And that's tough. We all have so much going on in our lives. It's hard to learn all the music that we need to learn. But that's one of the reasons why it's good to have some pieces that are kind of in your pocket, where you can go back. Here's a piece I learned 2 years ago, and I can play the heck out of this thing, and I practice it regularly, so I keep it ready to go. And that then can also be the thing that's your party piece. You know, when somebody goes, hey, you play the viola, could you play something for us? But you play that thing that you know cold.
Party piece. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who always had that, what's the thing I could really throw out there? And just know I'm gonna nail it. Um, David Escamilla asked a question about how the video auditions are going to work. And so I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about this. If you go to the YOSA website, if you just Google YOSA auditions, it'll take you directly to the audition page on our website. And then on the audition page on our website, there is a link there to the specific video audition guidelines. But the basic idea is this: you have until July 15th to upload your video auditions. We're going to ask you to play a scale and an arpeggio, 2 orchestral excerpts, and a piece of your solo repertoire. Just 2 or 3 minutes of your solo repertoire. Normally in a YOSA audition, you would play and we'd stop you at a certain point. In this case, you and your teacher should just pick out, here's the 2 or 3 minutes that I'm going to play out of this piece. We're not going to ask you to sight read on the video because that would be weird and basically impossible. But then you have until July 15th to upload that video. A lot of people ask, can you do more than one take? And the reality is, yes, you can. But I would not encourage you to do 17 takes. At a certain point, it's not going to get any better. So practice and prepare and practice and prepare. And then when you're ready, record and give it your best shot. And I'm actually going to be doing a video in the next couple of weeks that'll have more advice about how to shoot your video, how to make it look the best, as good as possible, so that we can really see and hear what you're doing for that audition. And then we will place everybody the way we normally do. It's just that the judges won't all be sitting together in one room. We'll watch and listen to your videos and score them and rank them. And then we'll put the orchestras together. And then in August, we'll communicate with everybody based on what we know at that time about what our timeline is for when we'll be able to start up, and go ahead and place everybody and move forward from there. So we hope that this extra time to prepare will be useful to people. So we had another question about teaching, Mr. Freudigman. Emily was asking about, not Emily Freudigman, but another Emily was asking about, I'm planning on teaching some younger students next year, she says. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips on teaching and getting points across to kids around 5th or 6th grade? How do you teach kids at that 11, 12, 13-year-old age? How is that different from working with other students?
Oh, patiently.
And how old is your son right now, by the way?
He's 11.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, patiently teaching. This age group, even younger. I have some younger students too. I have 8 and 9-year-olds. It is like herding cats. However, what I work with them on is fundamentals. The basic setup of how you hold the instrument, how you draw a sound, and at that age, what I also find, especially with the boys, it's got to be fun. So I have a lot of games that I play with them in my teaching. Things that have, like my older students, are very, very deep concepts about sound production. They're fun games. It may be making the sound of a motorcycle. It may be playing stop and go for Martellet. It's all sorts of things. And I also try to find out for me what they like in terms of music. My son is completely obsessed with all things Star Wars, and I've transcribed some things for him. He knows the dum 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 bum bum dum 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 da, and he can play it mostly, but it keeps him engaged. So I would suggest not only, finding ways to teach them fundamentals, keep it fun, keep it light, and that's where you'll keep them engaged.
Right. Excellent. Now, with those kinds of games and tricks and techniques, teaching more advanced students too. How many of those tips and tricks and games are things that you're making up or that you made up in the past? And how many of them are things that you experienced when you were a young cellist growing up? Or Do you swap ideas with other teachers? Are there, what is that? How do you come up with ideas of how to engage people?
Well, a lot of them. Well, some of the concepts came when I was young. I mean, the things that my teachers taught me. So I mean, I'm going back. I'm reaching back into the Stone Age, and yes, I'm older than Mr. Peters, so I go way back. I reach back.
You wouldn't know it from the gray hair in my head, but it's true. He's older than
you're here too. I have some books that I had when I was studying back in the 70s. I have notes of games that were written down, and I occasionally will go back and I'll look at them, and I'll like, wow, I remember that. And I think other things that you said, talking with other teachers, and doing this for, I mean, now I've been teaching privately for almost 30 years. I want to make an apology to my first year students. I was horrible. I was horrible. I knew everything what to do. I had no idea how to say it. I've done a lot of reading about teaching. There are some wonderful books about teaching children, including Suzuki's book. There's Phyllis Young, the String Game. There are so many wonderful books. And after a while, you have a repertoire of saying the same thing 49 different ways, and eventually one of those was actually today I've been working with a student trying to change the student's bow hand, and I've said it 19 different ways, and today it stuck. The student all of a sudden, it was just like a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I haven't said it that way in about 3 months to someone, and they figured it out, and now it's very organized. And so, it's just you learn, and and the thing is, there's no one right way.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that for that question earlier from Emily about teaching, I think one of the number one things that all of us learn in doing this for a long time is that sometimes you just have to come at it from a different angle, and then come at it from a different angle again. And the other thing, though, that I find is that there are some things where just having specific ways you say something and having them come up over and over again is a useful technique. For example, I have this friend who says bow speed is your friend, and it comes up a lot, and you live with that. And people in my orchestras know that numbers are the things with which we count, and there are things like that that we just keep coming back to, and sometimes sometimes those sort of goofy, like, why do we keep saying this, things actually end up being really memorable and useful too. So, but don't be afraid to come at it from a new angle. Daryl had a question for you, Mr. Freudigman, about etude books. This is, we're getting in the weeds here on string teaching, but for intermediate level students. So you're not in that 11, 12-year-old stage anymore. You're moving into more advanced repertoire, but you're not quite a YOSA Philharmonic, YOSA Symphony level player yet. What kind of etude books do you start to use when you move intermediate level students into developing technique?
My go-to set of etude books are the Schroeder 170 Foundation Studies. Actually, if you never played Popper, which you probably will, all 170 have a wonderful progression of techniques and problems to solve. And actually, I don't know if you guys know, but I used to teach at UTSA before I came to YOSA. And one of the classes that I taught was an independent study class on technique and pedagogy. And one of the things, the assignments that I gave was this class, they were all cellists. And I said, I need you to identify every technical aspect that they are dealing with in all 170 etudes. I could not tell you how clarifying it was for them about what it meant why this set of books existed. It's not because we're mean. It's really not. It's how, and so that's my go-to. If in just a little bit off that, scale books, I use the Galamian scale system. I know Galamian was a violinist, but it's a brilliant set of books for cello as well. That's where I would start, because I mean, if you did nothing else, that the 170 foundation studies would be a great place to be.
Our colleague Andy Post actually has a question for you, Ken. He was asking about what you've learned from Sebastian Langlessing, what insight you gained from him that you've then transferred to your own work at YOSA, your own work as a conductor. How do you steal from the maestro?
Well, it's interesting. When I first started conducting here, someone asked me, he said, how long have you been studying conducting? And I gave them two answers. One, I said, I took 2 semesters back in the 1980s at Eastman. And my other answer is, I've been studying conducting since my first professional job in 1988, because I've been sitting in front of conductors for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And so I know what works, I know what doesn't work. But specifically from Sebastian, Sebastian and I are kindred spirits musically. And so what I've really taken from him is his, and amplified it in myself, is his passion and his wild abandon at times. And that no matter what you're doing, it's all in service of the music. And what I do, and what I love, and I think all of us, the 3 conductors who are in the room right now, all feel this. So many of our concerts are better musical experiences than the ability of any one player, because we're building this thing from the ground up. And I think we find a way to inspire each one of you to play better than you really have any right to at times. I mean, it's amazing. And so the experience of this musical, the musical experience is just amazing to be around. Yeah, it's rough around the edges. I mean, sometimes the San Antonio Symphony is rough around the edges with Sebastian, but it's all about the music. It's about I mean, if there's anybody here who played the Finnick Cool with me, everybody will remember that, because it had that great story and it was a wonderful performance. So I think I take Sebastian's passion and I try to bring it in. So.
Well, and you pointed out something that I think is really important, that, you know, the reason that I fell for orchestral music is exactly that idea of how the collective musical experience can transcend what any one of us or any 6 of us or any 20 of us could do. Yeah. And no matter how jaded or frustrated a musician gets, those moments happen in an orchestra where you sort of magically rise above what can happen. And don't get me wrong, chamber music is amazing. Chamber music is a whole different kind of magic. And in some ways, a more bewitching kind of magic, a more reliable kind of magic, because you have more control over what you're doing with your colleagues. And yet, in an orchestra, when everything comes together at a magical moment of rubato in a Brahms symphony, it's a different feeling than you can get with any other kind of musicianship. When 75 or 95 people take a hairpin turn and make it exactly together, and you feel several hundred or 1,000 people in the audience actually like connecting to that energy, I mean, it's nuts. And I mean, for me, I remember experiencing that at 16, doing Wagner Wesendonck-Lieder and Wagner the Tristan und Isolde prelude with a really visionary conductor in like this small gymnasium in a rural community, where all of a sudden it was just like all of us were like, dude, what is going on? This feels amazing. And just chasing that for the rest of my life. What does it feel like when that electricity kicks in?
Yeah.
It's so gratifying that we get to have that at YOSA. There are times where you can just feel the electric spark on stage, and it's not just with Philharmonic. I feel it with orchestras all up and down the levels. You know, I remember really vividly this year a moment in a YOSA Prelude strings performance where it was like everything locked in, and you just felt this incredible joy. You know, that's what orchestras offer, this chance to rise above ourselves. And man, I can't wait to do it again.
My experience is 1982, Sibelius Second Symphony, on tour with Interlochen Orchestra in Escanaba, Michigan. It is January. It is snowing sideways, and playing that piece for about 300 people in a gymnasium, and just going, "Oh yeah, this, yeah,
yeah." And it's that's Mr. Freudigman had that experience as an adolescent more than once. I had that experience as an adolescent more than once. A few weeks ago, we talked with Mr. Post about a memorable concert at Baylor University for him. I think it's really important for YOSA musicians to know that's what we want for you guys. We say YOSA changes kids' lives through music because that's what we want to do. We want you to come to YOSA and in rehearsals, in concerts, at Mo Ranch, on tour, to have those moments where it just feels like, are you freaking kidding me? I can't believe this. So that's also why we want you to work. That's why we want you to practice. That's why we want you to get better at what you do, because the more technique and skill you bring to the table, then the more tools we all have to work with to make those magic moments happen. But ultimately, it's about the passion. Mr. Freudigman has that in spades, and that's one of the reasons why I love having him on this team. We're getting close to wrapping up. I wanted to ask you one more. Well, I want to throw out one more topic that came up. Matt Tobar actually asked, would you all think about putting out an album after the pandemic? And, you know, I think that raises a larger question just about, like, we're in this time where we can't give live performances, but people are putting up videos. There are all kinds of past recordings from concerts and studio recordings that people are sharing. And so first of all, I would say in answer to your question, Matt, we do put all our live recordings on Bandcamp. And we are doing more and more video work of trying to get more and more of our concerts available on YouTube with video. It'd be interesting to look at doing some kind of a more formal kind of recording process where we try to really perfect and polish something. And you know, I'll give that some thought and see if there's a way for us to sort of more formally record something more cleanly. But Mr. Freudigman, what do you think about? Obviously, we can't wait to get back to live performance. But what do you think about all of the proliferation of video performances and all kinds of recordings being available? Are we hungry for that right now? And giving audiences, what is it giving musicians to be doing that?
Well, I mean, for audiences, I think they're starving for what we do. I mean, if there was ever a clarion call for the importance of arts and what we do, it's so obvious. For musicians, for me specifically, being able to share this music, even though it's, you know, through this device, is still important, and it still means a lot to me to do that. And I think all you kids out there, I mean, keep on creating, keep on producing content. It's better to get that out than leave it here. You know, we have this one life to live, and you know, I mean, let's live life to the fullest. And right now, even though we can't be together, we can still connect through this medium. I was saying to my wife, or she was saying to me, can you imagine if this had been 1985 when this happened? I mean, we're so much, we have so much more interconnectedness now than we do there. So keep it up. Send YOSA your stuff. Send me your stuff. Send me your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are people who've asked questions in the comments we haven't gotten to. I'm going to circle back and try and type some answers for those comments. But Mr. Freudigman and I have both said a whole bunch of times in different forums, like, reach out to us if you want to talk, if you have questions, you know, shoot us an email, a text. we're easy to find. And so reach out if you want to connect or talk more about any questions you have. And I will add this shameless plug to amplify what Mr. Freudigman just said. We are doing our best to push out video performances of YOSA musicians and YOSA alumni right now. And so I would encourage you all to think about getting creative and clever about what can you do with performance on video, and share with YOSA so that we can have that be part of what we're sharing with the world. Mr. Freudigman, thank you so much for taking the time today. Thank you so much for being part of the YOSA team. And thanks to everybody who tuned in today. You have any closing thoughts before we log off?
Keep practicing, keep moving. That's my tagline for running. Keep loving your families, and we will be together hopefully sooner than later. We miss you all.
Thanks, man. All right. Have a great Sunday night, everybody, and we will talk to you again soon. We'll be back next Sunday, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.